Hey, welcome. Today we're going to talk about World War II. Last unit we learned about World War I, and in the previous few lessons we've talked about the world between wars and the totalitarian governments set up in Soviet Union, which was Russia, Italy, and in Germany, as well as militarism in Japan. So today we're going to look at the actual beginning of World War II. If you are watching this for the first time, please follow along and underline in your notes. And please let me know if you have any questions later on. So we're going to start off by talking about the League of Nations. The League of Nations was established at the end of World War I. It was something that the United States really pushed for. However, the United States never joined, and it really wasn't very successful. So it's an organization established after World War I to prevent war and settle disputes through diplomacy rather than going to war. And once again, the United States was the one that pushed for it. Nobody else really was that adamant about having it. And when it comes time to actually prevent war, nobody is really willing to step up. So the League of Nations had no army, no way of enforcing laws. They're really dependent on the people in the League of Nations, Britain and France, to stop this. But Britain and France are not willing to go to war. Or Germany, Soviet Union, Japan, Italy, some of these other major countries. However, these countries are the ones that are sparking war. So members of the League of Nations adopted a policy of appeasement against aggressive nations rather than using force because they did not want to go to war. And appeasement means you're given the demands of the aggressor to keep peace. Now, this does not work just as when Italy gave Mussolini the title of prime minister and when Germany elected Hitler chancellor. That did not stop their ambitions. They continue to go from there. So every time the League of Nations gives in, there's going to be another response to what they're doing, and people are going to want more land, and it eventually is going to lead to war anyways, but a much larger war. So the League of Nations is completely ineffective, and we're going to see that throughout this. So here's some reasons why they chose appeasement rather than going to war. First off, Britain and France are not doing very well. World War I was harsh. Most of it took place in France, and they're still recovering from this, so they adopt a policy of sanctions, which sometimes aren't even enforced because of the economic problems. They just don't want to go to war again. Many people in Britain felt that the Treaty of Versailles was too harsh on Germany, so the actions of Germany and Hitler are therefore justifiable. Britain and France feared communism as well with what's going on in the Soviet Union and Joseph Stalin, and they really viewed Italy and Germany as potential allies against the threat of Stalin and communist Soviet Union. And quite frankly, the United States wanted nothing to do with Europe anymore. They view Europe as kind of a lost cause that's going to continue to go to war, and we don't want to get involved in their future wars. So let's start off with talking about Japan, and this is stuff we already talked about a little bit before, but Japan invades China. So military leaders took control of Japan after the Great Depression. People lost faith in the actual government, and they invade Manchuria, which is an area in northeast China with lots of resources such as coal and iron. So they're still going for imperialism, just like they took over Korea. They want more land, they want more resources, and China is going to be their target. So people thought the League of Nations would step in and stop this, but they didn't. They protested Japan's imperialism. They said it was wrong. They condemned it, but they were not willing to go to force to stop it. And this pictures Hideki Tojo, leader of the Japanese military at this time. However, the League of Nations proved unwilling to use force against Japan, as we said, and in 1933, when the League of Nations condemned them, Japan went ahead and just withdrew from the League of Nations rather than following through the League's demands to exit China. Then they go ahead and invade the rest of China, and this starts the Second Sino-Japanese War, which takes place in 1937, which many people say is actually the start of World War II. It's definitely the start of World War II in Asia. Italy, which we already talked about, invaded Ethiopia. This took place in 1935 with Benito Mussolini, the leader of Italy, invading Ethiopia, an African nation that remained independent during the scramble for Africa. Mussolini comes down now with that Italy is more industrialized, and they use tanks and airplanes and poisonous gas and mass executions against the Ethiopians. Ethiopia can't stop this. They appeal to the League of Nations for help. League of Nations condemns the actions but does not help Ethiopia, and most of this is brought to the attention of the world through the Red Cross, and Mussolini goes ahead and bombs the Red Cross tents in retaliation. Without the help of the League of Nations or anyone else, Britain and France unwilling to step in, Italy conquered Ethiopia and goes ahead and joins forces and forms an alliance with Adolf Hitler and Germany. So by 1934, Adolf Hitler had set up a totalitarian government or totalitarian dictatorship in Germany. He had gotten rid of all rival parties and all rival politicians. He took advantage of the League of Nations' resistance to use force by violating the terms of the hated Treaty of Versailles. The guilt clause, reparation payments, disarmament, and loss of land are all things that are unpopular. And here you can see a picture of Adolf Hitler on the right of the screen, and to his right, left of the screen, you see Benito Mussolini, leader of Italy. So here is a map showing Germany in the light yellow, and then to the left you can see the Rhineland, which is a demilitarized zone between France and Germany. To the right you can see Czechoslovakia and the Sudetenland. Sudetenland is in pink, and then down below you can see Austria. All these things are going to be targets of Adolf Hitler, and every time he does something, the League of Nations does basically nothing. And he continues. Many people say that Adolf Hitler actually stated that he would have stopped much earlier if the League of Nations would have stepped up and stopped him earlier. So by this point, the German military is pretty strong. Adolf Hitler had killed Ernst Röhm. He had absorbed the SA into the German army. So now instead of 100,000 troops, they have over 5 million, and that number is going to continue to grow. In 1936, he's going to go ahead and send these troops in the Rhineland, this little area here bordering France and Germany, causing France to be afraid but not willing to go to war. And the League of Nations once again does absolutely nothing. So he's violating the Treaty of Versailles. Then he forms the Rome, Berlin, Tokyo Axis, known as the Axis powers. This is Italy, Germany, and Japan joining forces. They're going against the Western democracies of France and Britain and the United States, and they also agreed to fight Soviet communism, which would be Joseph Stalin. So now you have the beginning of your alliances with Italy, Germany, and Japan forming the Axis. The Allies will form later on. Well, World War II has not started yet, but in 1936 you do have a war, and this is in Spain, and it's a civil war, meaning Spain is fighting against Spain. And the leader of this is a Spanish general, Francisco Franco. So despite the name, he is from Spain, not France. And he leads a revolt against the Spanish government, and this leads to a bloody civil war. Germany and Italy use this kind of as a dress rehearsal, and they send forces to help Franco, and he overthrows the Spanish government. Britain, France, the United States remain neutral. They do not want to get involved in a war. The United States really wants nothing to do with Europe at this point. And Germany used the Spanish Civil War to prepare and test the German military for possible war. So when World War II does break out, Germany's all ready to go, whereas France and Britain are going to be slow to start. And largely due to the support of the German military and the Italian military, but mostly the German military, Francisco Franco is going to win a civil war. He's going to become a dictator in Spain, and he's going to set up a fascist government similar to Nazi Germany and fascist Italy in Spain, and this is going to stay all the way for decades that he will be in charge until he finally dies, and he begins his own reign of terror, his own totalitarian dictatorship. Now Germany's already gone to war, nothing's happened, they've rebuilt their military, it looks like war is going to be a problem, but once again, they're not sure what to do. They don't want to fight against Germany, they're scared of the Soviet Union, and they end up doing nothing. So in 1938, Adolf Hitler actually goes a step further, and he actually took over Austria. He annexed it, he sends in his military, it's his homeland, and Austria doesn't really put up a huge fight, but the League of Nations does nothing, France and Britain do nothing. There's a brief war scare. People think, whoa, he just took over a country. There's no way they're going to let this go, but they just let him take over Austria without any consequences whatsoever. Next, Adolf Hitler is going to flat out say he wants the Sudetenland, which is this little red area here. Let's see if this little red area here, and they've already taken over all of this maroon area. You have Germany, the Rhineland, you have Austria, and now he says, I want the Sudetenland. Well, Czechoslovakia is scared that they're going to get invaded by Germany. So once again, they turn to France and Britain to try to support them. And Britain and France agree to meet with Germany at the Munich Conference. And this takes place in September of 1938. And they give in to the demands of Adolf Hitler. So they say, hey, great news. You are not going to get attacked by Adolf Hitler. And they're like, great, what did you do? And they're like, you are just going to surrender this land. So they convince Czechoslovakia just to give Hitler whatever he wants as long as he promises not to take over Czechoslovakia. And you have France and Britain meeting with him. You have the Prime Minister of Britain, Neville Chamberlain, saying, hey, I have peace for our time. I prevented war. I'm so great. I'm so awesome. I knew this would work. And they just give Hitler what he wants, figuring that Hitler will be happy. He's not going to take over any more land. He has Austria. He has the Sudetenland. What more could he possibly want? Well, somehow they're shocked when in March, so you have September and then March, so you have not a whole lot of time passes before Adolf Hitler says, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and take over the rest of Czechoslovakia. So Czechoslovakia has been conquered, and France and Britain are like, oops. But people think they're going to go to war, but they don't. So it was not peace for our time. They say, we're drawing a line. You took over Austria, you took over Czechoslovakia, you rebuilt your military, stop paying reparation payments. Enough is enough. We maybe will declare war if something else happens. So here he has the Sudetenland and all of Czechoslovakia. So this whole area here has now been conquered by Adolf Hitler without Britain or France or the League of Nations doing anything. Now, Adolf Hitler is concerned because his next target is actually Poland. You can see here, and if we extend this map further, over here, the yellow, or the gold, is the Soviet Union. And he is scared that if he invades Poland, this might cause a war with the Soviet Union and Joseph Stalin. Soviet Union is not a greatly powerful country at this point, but Stalin has them industrializing, and quite frankly, everyone's kind of scared of Stalin. So rivals Hitler and Stalin signed a non-aggression pact, and they made plans to overrun Eastern Europe together, where Hitler would get the western half of Poland and Stalin would get the eastern half of Poland. And really, neither side trusts each other. Hitler doesn't trust Stalin. Stalin doesn't trust anybody. But Stalin thinks this is a good way to, well, quite frankly, to use a terrible pun, stall and buy time so that Hitler will not attack him. So after he squares away with Soviet Union and makes sure that Soviet Union is not going to declare war on him, he goes ahead and invades Western Poland. Shortly after this, the Soviet Union is going to invade Eastern Poland. Poland is taken over right away. Britain and France declare war on Germany. At this point, it's already a long ways in the war, and pretty much everything on this map to this side of France has already been taken over by Germany. France will not put up much of a fight. Britain will put up a little bit more resistance. World War II officially begins, although fighting does not take place immediately. And we will learn more about the invasion of Poland, the surrender of France, and Britain trying to turn the tides with being the only remaining country against Nazi Germany. All right, thanks for listening. In the next lesson, we'll talk about the actual beginnings of the battles and the German Blitzkrieg. All right, thanks for listening. Have any questions, let me know. Talk to you later. Bye.